To our right hand side we have what will become the Crescent Kerno, which will be the new records office for Cornwall. The next phase of the project will see the building redeveloped with new open spaces for learning and for exhibitions to be presented. We have the leak system with a new flood basin, which we'll have a look at, and as we pan across the site we have new areas of public open space. Chimler House is here to the left, and it's owned by a private developer, and his ambitions for the future are to have that as mixed use sort of office and potentially a restaurant on the lower floor. The brewery's always been a bit of a blot and had a couple of major fires which caused quite a bit of devastation, and that was evident when we first moved onto the site, and some of the initial aerial photographs that we have really show the concentration of buildings and some of the complexities that we had to face when we first arrived here. One of the biggest hazards that we had to overcome was the asbestos risk, not only to us and our employees, but also to the general public and the people living around the area. Initial challenges when we occupied the site back in 2014 was that the perimeter of the site wasn't very secure. So our first operation was to put up new hoarding painted in the red for Redruth across the whole site. From there it was the challenge with the existing buildings. We had to start with asbestos removal. We removed around 500 tonnes from the site itself. Specialist contractors assisted us in removing a lot of the buildings and making it safe for us to progress with our civils work. So following removal of the buildings, we started on the civils works. Now, part of this scheme is to offer flood alleviation for the surrounding properties. The historic lead has always passed through the site, but it was culverted in places, and one of our first jobs was to actually install a brand new open channel culvert throughout the whole length of the site. What we've also created is what's known as the flood basin that you'll see behind me. Now, the flood basin itself acts as a storage system for any excess water in the 1 in 100 year flood event. As it travels down from Cornwall, it enters into the site at the top by a diverter that's placed within the highway. That highway diverter will force the water overland, which is quite forward thinking. A lot of culverts are underground and a lot of alleviation systems try and force the water underground, but this really is quite pioneering and takes on board the flows calculated by the Environment Agency. It enters through the site, and as I said, it retards as it enters the existing historic culvert, backs up and also stores within the road itself in a tank system. When the levels decrease, that tank is then released and the water recirculates back into the leak. When we removed the floor slabs from the buildings that were located on the site, we found an old tank. Now, this tank was approximately 30 metres long, 4 metres wide, 4.5 metres deep. It was granite built with a brick arch roof. No records really indicated it being present on site. One of our tasks was to remediate this by excavating it, proving the ground underneath for any mining risk, and then building back up with suitable structural fill material. As we started that work, what we came to find is that there was another tank, and that tank actually led to a mine shaft. Now, this mine shaft had to be excavated to find a solid bottom to remediate it. When we started to excavate that down approximately 6 metres from the existing ground levels, we found an adit or a tunnel. Now, this tunnel was leading from this shaft back towards the building itself. Specialist crews were employed to then investigate this further, and what they found is they found another shaft. Now, this shaft was located right next to the building facade itself, and when we did some more investigation, what we found is the building had been built on the collar of the shaft. Further investigation found that this shaft was approximately 12 metres in depth, and we had approximately 8 metres of building above us. So the risk of collapse was quite real. During that investigation, we found another adit or tunnel, this one slightly deeper, and that was leading back towards the centre of the site. When the specialist crews surveyed it and looked at where it was going, we actually found another open shaft. Now, this shaft had a timber bottom, what we call a false bottom, and we believe it was a lot deeper than the other two that we have found on the site. We had to work with our sort of specialist partners, HVOK, and our engineering services laboratory to come up with a innovative design to be able to allow the passage of water to continue, but to stabilise them themselves. This was all very unexpected works. However, we managed to react quickly and undertake it without too much disruption to the overall programme for the main works. This cover is all that visually you can see in respect to one of the deepest mine shafts that we've found. We've cast a structural slab approximately 6 metres below where I'm stood now, but that still opens and allows water to come up through. Below that it's another 6 metres to what we believe is a false timber bottom. Potentially it could go deeper and deeper again. The adit system then runs from where I'm stood back towards the building itself. The massive hole isn't dangerous anymore because what we've done, we've cast a very thick reinforced concrete slab on the rock level. It's very competent ground, and under specialist advice from consultants, we've then allowed the water passage to come up through, because by blocking water passage and flow through the old mine system could cause it to spring up anywhere, and what we really don't want to happen is for it to spring up within the building. The adit has been left in place. We put a special engineering matting that goes over and bridges the adit or tunnel itself. So if there was any small collapse, this material will hold up what's above it. So all of this will be protected. As we travel back, the other feature that we found first off, that was traditionally coned out and plugged with concrete. So no risk of that sinking or moving any further. And then the adit and tunnel by the building with the shaft has been poured up and grouted to stabilise that as well. One of the key challenges was to ensure that the records of Cornwall, which is all of Cornwall's history, which will be stored in this building after its completion, are safe and safe from flooding. This site is at the bottom of a valley, so all the water is attracted to here. One of our biggest challenges on the site was groundwater and the levels. From what we've discussed with the Environment Agency and with all their other protection measures for flood alleviation in the area, this flood to capture this would have to be sort of on a biblical level to actually work to its full capacity. Therefore, there's plenty of redundancy in the scheme itself, and obviously that's good for obviously protecting the people in the future. The water that you actually see holding in the base of the flood basin is the natural level of the groundwater on this site. So we've had to excavate another 2 or 3 metres below that level, and therefore every excavation that we dug on site would quite quickly fill with water. So the temporary works required to not only divert what you see being the existing leat, but also to deal with the groundwater were quite extensive. And what we had to do is employ a lot of mechanical pumping into settlement lagoons, have the water tested, have it approved by the Environment Agency, and then allow it to discharge slowly back into the leat system. As you can see, the natural level of the leat is running through. When we have a storm event, this will overtop the channel that has been created to contain it. It will flood this landscaped area with all the species chosen specifically to be submersed in water. What it will do is fill up to the grates that you can see. The water will then feed through the grate system, and it will flow down to the right hand side and enter into a big attenuation tank which is located underneath the highway built to serve the scheme. When the levels then drop, the tank will then discharge through a series of pipework and manholes back into the leat and disperse naturally. This is the spillway where the water from the leat enters into the box culvert, which passes underneath the new highway. This was more traditionally designed to start with, granite stone faced gabion baskets. What we really wanted to do was to ensure the history of the site was captured. We spoke to one of the local glass collectors from the local pubs and asked him to supply us a couple of thousand bottles to be able to create these gabion baskets. He obliged, and what you can see is we're keeping the bottles to mark what used to be here in respect to the brewery. Now on these baskets, about halfway down, you may see a line of brown bottles. Now these bottles were excavated from the ground and were belonging to Redruth Brewery Company. They have RBC stamped in the bottom, and we thought it would be nice to include that to mark history of the scheme. So another key consideration for us during the scheme was the stability of the existing chimney, which will be retained on the site as a feature within the permanent scheme. We had to install specialist monitoring equipment to make sure any vibration that we caused during our operations didn't affect the structural stability of the chimney itself. I'm pleased to report it's still standing, so everything went A-OK. So probably on to one of my most favourite parts of the scheme is the granite wall. Now this granite wall, all of the material was reclaimed from this site, whether it came out of one of the old buildings or a lot of it we actually excavated from the ground itself. We've left its character, we've left its holes and its bumps and its roughness to really record the history of the site. This used to be a manhole cover. We've cast it into the wall and we've left the hooks that used to be used to actually lift it out of the ground. It's around 100 millimetres thick, it has tapered edges, so it sits snugly within the granite framework on top of the tank. They must have been really strong boys to be able to lift them out. We had to use an excavator to actually lift it and get it into position. During the course of this work, archaeologists were involved quite heavily due to the historic nature of the site. The building dates back from the late 1700s, and the water itself that comes out of wheel silver adit in the corner of the site was actually used for the brewing process. So the water from our findings, we believe, was pumped using a system of steam engine pumps and then forced into the brewery for the brewing process. We were discussing the bottles that we excavate from the site, and we managed to find enough of the consistent brown bottles to obviously place within the gabion basket wall. Some of the other examples that we found, more rarely, Redruth Brewery with the stopper included, and also with ale still inside. We believe that this dates 80 to 100 years. And then one that you would struggle to put down in a bar with a round bottom. This one's the rarest of them all from what we've been told. It used to be corked instead of having a stopper, and that's why there's a round bottom. So you would store it on the side so that the cork didn't dry out. We also found a number of other examples, probably ranging 10 to a dozen in total. The best of those will become an exhibition within the archive centre itself, along with some examples of more of the bottle tops. We must have found over 300 bottle tops when excavating on the site. They'll all be used as a collection for the Crescent Kerno. When we excavated and found this bottle that we believe to be 80 to 100 years old, it had the stopper intact. And the first thing that any of us did was to take the top off. As we took the top off, it fizzed. We couldn't believe it, and smelling it now, it still has a very pungent smell of ale. Nobody was quite brave enough to try it. It looks a little bit murky, to be honest. So as we look down through the leak corridor itself, you'll see the newly formed banks. All the landscaping was undertaken by our specialist in-house team. They did a sterling job with the planting and establishing all the plants that will obviously take over the site and make it look a lot more presentable in the future. The specialist contractors utilised for the banks, they used a hydro seed system, which is a tanker that you mix the seed in with a mulch, and then you apply it from the back of the tanker onto the banks themselves. It's mixed with water, so then it germinates and then takes root within the banks. And what that saves is any of our employees having to work on the banks themselves next to live running water. Specialist plants were used throughout the scheme, in particular down at the flood basin. Due to water being trapped within the ground, those species had to be able to take submersion in water for 90% of their life. So here we have the artist sculptures that's on the main concourse into the building itself behind me. These statues weigh approximately 350 kilos and they're cast in concrete with a reinforced steel membrane and also steel fibres to give it its support. These were lifted by crane into position and then bolted to a concrete base beneath it, so they're not going to go anywhere. I feel really fortunate as a local man to be involved with this project. The key stakeholders such as Cornwall Council, the Archive Centre, the Town Council are really pleased with what we've achieved here. We've attracted national attention. Back in May we had the Prime Minister David Cameron come and visit our site, he commended us for our efforts here and could see some of the challenges that were being faced by us. So it's really good to see a site that also is here for open public access, but it will also offer local employment for local people in an area which requires more growth and economic stability. This is really going to be an excellent landmark and a place where people want to come and learn and enjoy the space that we've created.